Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our latest episode of Pioneers Pathway podcast. As always, my name's Liam, and I'm so glad to be with you guys today. And I'm joined by my amazing co-host Sharia. Sharia, how are you doing? You all good?
All good, Liam. All good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Glad to be back in London. I think it's the first time that I'm recording. Well, first time for quite a bit of time that I'm recording in London. So it's great to be back. And we've got a fellow, Well, I call it a fellow Londoner. He's not actually from London, but he's in London today. And we're so glad to welcome Rhys onto the show. How are you doing, Rhys? Are you all good?
Wait, I disconnected for a second. 1 second. Okay. Yes, hello there. I'm doing well. What about yourselves?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. You're based in London. It's quite sunny at the moment, isn't it? It's very good weather, unsurprisingly for London, right?
Oh, 100%. It's been quite warm for the past week, which is really nice. And end of the 3 month misery over winter, so
Reese, do you want to
everyone's
if you
enjoying.
switch off your camera? Let's see if
Yeah,
that makes it a bit better.
that's okay.
Try again.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
repeat
been
that again.
really
Sorry, we
uh,
didn't catch that.
completely fine. Yeah. No, the weather's been like lovely. It's a nice end to the 3 month misery. Of
It,
like coldness in London, so it's nice to
yeah,
finally have some good weather.
it's quite nice, isn't it? It's quite good, isn't it? No, it's good. It's good, and we're so grateful for you coming onto the show today. And we've been really looking forward to this. There's a lot we want to talk about, and obviously it's so hard to try and condense that into 25 minutes. But let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. Maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them a bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, of course. So I'm a third year medical student at King's. I've been exploring MedTech and entrepreneurship for just over a year now. My goal before I graduate is to impact over 100,000 patients.
Okay, cool. That's quite a bold statement. Quite a bold statement. What? How did you get there? How did you get there? How did you get to having this dream, this aspiration to impact so many people? Where did it all start, and how has that developed?
Oh wow, it's a big question, isn't it? It's like where does it all start? I'll say it's very hard to pinpoint exactly where it started. I think my journey has been quite chaotic, but just because it's chaotic, doesn't mean it's bad. I will say it kind of all started in my gap year. Over COVID, I got rejected from medical school and that's like my first time being properly rejected. So it was very much a massive reflective moment on what I want to do, in terms of career going forward. And I was really determined to get back into a flow of things. And I went on a lot of different work experience, particularly medical related, to see is this actually what I want. And I explored a lot of different things. One really core experience was working in an independent pharmacy, which is a really interesting fact a lot of people didn't know I have, is just working in a pharmacy. And in there, it really kind of explored my horizons to entrepreneurship. It's just interesting how this pharmacy was competing against massive pharmacies in the UK. For example, competing against Boots and the larger pharmacy. And it's all about innovation, especially in the pharmacy world. And I only properly explored it about a month ago. Not a month, sorry, a year ago. Um, and that really made me realize kind of like, especially in medicine, they very much train you to become NHS doctors. There isn't a lot of mention to get into, let's say, using the medical degree to get into research or anything else. And kind of just hearing the NHS on what it's like being a doctor, especially in general practice, having thing like 15 or 10 minutes with a patient. It was something that I went into medicine to create an impact, and the average doctor impacts around 50,000 patients in their lifetime. So I wanted to kind of create more of that impact, essentially through innovation.
And so do you would you say NHS the NHS is sort of the avenue that you are you want to go down, becoming a professional inside the hospital environment, or is there a more entrepreneurial role that you want to take in what is a really vast industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. On any time someone asks me about that, especially what I want to do after graduating, I always tell them, give me £1 billion, I will still study medicine and become a doctor, just because that's my initial goal. And it's really that crossover between science and just interacting with humans really, really attracts me. But there's only so much impact that you can have as a doctor, right? Especially in this world where technology is very broad and very exciting. I think the world of innovation needs more doctors, unless, and not less, but like more doctors rather than innovators that are interested in medicine.
And just thinking about that opinion, right? Because medicine's a very broad field, and it's also very complicated. It's not an easy field to get into. You spend a lot of time training,
100%.
a lot of qualifications you have to get. How do you think that medical professionals can sort of contribute towards wider innovation beyond their traditional clinical roles?
Yeah, no,
Sorry, just to top that as well. Medical, it takes up a lot of your time. So as doctors, what's your sort of advice on how they can, sort of upskill themselves to have a wide impact?
So I'll take the first question, Liam. Can you quickly repeat that again?
Yeah, so just talking about how you think medical professionals in what's a complicated career path and a complicated industry. How do you think they can best contribute towards innovation beyond their traditional roles?
Well, just for transparency, I'm in my third year of medicine at the moment, so I'll tell you what I do know. There's a lot of things I don't know, but just from talking to a lot of doctors, a lot of times, like, oops, sorry, turn on my camera. A lot of times, doctors are going to be the end users of medical technology, right? There's a lot of inefficiencies people talk about in the NHS, but it's very easy to talk about inefficiencies rather than acting upon them. And I think, especially when you're in a highly specialized field, there will be things that you're looking at. There will be research papers you're looking at to keep up to date. There will be active problems that you're finding, right? And innovation is all about coming up with solutions to problems. Whether that's the research paper that you saw, a lot of it doesn't get commercialized, so it's thinking about how can I commercialize that. That's the short answer from what I've heard and what I've learned from talking to a lot of different doctors. And to answer the second question about getting involved, especially with such a... Is it because... Sorry, can you clarify the question again, Shoria?
Yeah, sure. So basically, doctors, when you're practicing can be quite time intense, right? So
Yeah.
how do you do you have any advice for them on how they can aim to have a wider impact in line with your sort of vision?
Yeah, I think it starts with fundamental values, right? I think research and entrepreneurship is two very different things. I know a lot of doctors, they love research, but the commercialization and innovation aspect might be quite different. So I think if people do want to get involved, then it's about, they have to have that drive to get involved, right? And I think definitely balancing being a full-time doctor, being a full-time carer can be very difficult. But I think especially at the very start, it's all about learning, right? You know a lot, especially as a doctor, you know a lot about your field. You know a lot about your patient's problems. And I think it's about being able to contribute to that space once you have that knowledge. I think the easiest way for people to get involved is just by talking to people in that space, because there will be opportunities that arise. I know a lot of doctors, they give advice to startups from a due diligence perspective, where they give clinician input on, is that startup going to be viable? So that's a very easy way to get involved.
Okay, no, and a recent, industry that's, come up in the last few years has been telehealth. It's obviously very different to MedTech. So do you want to, give our listeners, first of all, what is the difference between the two? And second of all, what are your thoughts on both of them?
So give the difference between telehealth and MedTech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the grey area, right? A lot of people talk about MedTech or they talk about health tech, and sometimes it's interchangeable. I think just by my definitions, those two overlap in some areas, but the main distinguishing factor is that for me, medical technologies is more to do with diseases, whereas health tech or telehealth is kind of more to do with general health. And of course, when people say medtech, I think a lot of people think of medical devices, so physical hardware, whereas might be more to do with kind of like video consultation or services. So I think there's a lot of like grey areas. There's a lot of like definition and crossover. Kind of like people saying AI and machine learning, right? There are like standard definitions, but I think it is kind of often misused in a lot of different places.
And thinking a bit more about the medical area, it'd be really interesting to know a bit more about what your opinion is of the current landscape. What do you think the emerging trends which you find the most exciting, and how do you see them impacting the wider landscape going forward?
Yeah, I mean the thing with MedTech is that, well, doctors they study so much in just medicine in general, and the reason being is there's just a lot of different specialties, right? And it can go so deep. So I think it's about trying to find kind of that common area that's exciting. Because what's exciting in, let's say, surgery might be very different to what's exciting in, let's say, dermatology, right? Or general practice. I think the kind of common thing, and especially a lot of buzzword that's used a lot, is just AI and machine learning. But it's very difficult, at least for me, to choose one thing, just because it's like medicine, there's so many different specialties. For me personally, I'm really interested in dermatology, and I think there's a lot of software that uses cameras to assist in diagnosis.
Okay, and so just leading on from the points that we've made regarding technology. Now, I imagine in a field like medicine, there's going to be a fair bit of skepticism regarding the use of technology, right? So, and I'm sure that's been happening for a number of years, even though we've got a master of technology being used in medicine. So, what are your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, can I clarify, what do you mean by there's a lot of skepticism with technology?
So, as in, for example, whenever new technology comes around, right, people are always hesitant to use it. And
Yeah.
I'm sure medicine is no different to that. And evidently, there's loads of articles about it. You see it everywhere. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is a very big problem. I think especially in the UK, more so with the uptake for technologies that are targeting doctors, right? As in, you can have a new electronic health record, and then doctors might be a bit more hesitant to uptake on that. A really good example is, have you guys heard of Epic?
No, never heard of that.
No, it's so in the hospital placement that I'm in now, at St Thomas's Hospital in London, and I'm sure like a lot of different London hospitals, there was I think October 2022 or 2023 or 24, actually I forgot. But very recently, in the past 3 years, they changed the electronic health records, the program that they were using before, which was essentially to try and combine all of the different programs that that healthcare team would use for patient documentation into one program. And it was a very difficult task. I mean, you're trying to combine all the different data into one. You have to, it's an overnight change. So doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals were being trained on it like weeks or even months before. And even now, like, there's a lot of complaints about it, right? There's a lot of complaints about how slow it can be and just change in general. I think the uptake is quite difficult because we are very much used to one system. We get taught with one system. And especially with kind of like patient lives, I guess, at risk, it's like if something isn't necessarily broken, then they might be more hesitant for change. But it's a lot of different factors, I would say. A lot of different factors associating with just change. I think for patients, it's a bit easier, especially for those patients that are always trying to look for alternative solutions, right? One treatment isn't working. Oh, I wonder what the new treatment is. But I think it really depends on kind of what demographic it is and how big of a problem it really is. I mean, have you guys heard of other medical technologies that might not be uptaked as well?
I think there's always sort of there's loads of technologies out there, but it's it's getting certain segments of society who may not be used to these technologies kind of up to date with it. I know the elderly is one segment which, because of their lack of technology adoption or easy on fast technology adoption, it tends to lag behind. But also, I guess with online GP appointments, things like that, there's always people who will say they prefer things face to face. But I think it's the educating people around that, right, and get them used to these things.
Yeah, no, the demographic's a big one, 100%. I mean, it's like, especially people that are more elderly, they tend to be the ones that have the most comorbidities, right? So they tend to make up a larger part. And it's a difficult problem, right? It's a really difficult problem to solve.
It's more of and correct me if you have another opinion of this, but it's a long-term process, a long-term shift. It's not going to happen overnight, right? You can't shift everything towards technology overnight. It's that gradual sort of adoption of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to sort of move the conversation a bit more towards the experience you've had, especially over the last few years. And we know that you've done a lot of events, a lot of initiatives that you've become involved with in the entrepreneurial space. One of those was and correct me if I'm wrong with the name, the ASES London bootcamp. I've never heard about it. I don't know, Shari, have you ever heard about it?
I'll be honest, I can't say I have.
Yes.
So I'm interested to hear what Rhys has to say about it.
Are you able to explain to our listeners what it's about and what you sort of wanted to gain out of it?
Yeah, no, of course. So it was actually a really nice experience, and I'll start from the very start because it was probably one of the moments in my life that I was like, wow, this is a really interesting kind of boot camp essentially. Whenever I got an offer to join and participate in it. I'm sure you guys have heard of Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, ASES, the ASES, stands for Affiliated Affiliated Stanford Entrepreneurial Students. And essentially, it's like a society within Stanford, right? And Stanford is quite well known for the Silicon Valley energy, for entrepreneurship, innovation. They're very well known for that, and essentially it's their kind of entrepreneurship society equivalent. Each year they have a massive summit called ASES Summit. This will become kind of like relevant later on. And in different parts of the world they have different chapters. So ASES London was the London chapter, and it was started by two people that went to that ASES Summit. And they started it this year, so I was the first cohort to go through it. And it was really exciting. I just remember getting the offer for that and just being very excited because it was my first time doing something entrepreneurial in terms of a bootcamp or accelerator. And it was just amazing, honestly. I think the community is really cool. It's very much people like myself. Because I think, I'm not sure about you guys, but I feel like it can get quite lonely whenever you have an interest in a course. For example, for me it's medicine, but a lot of people are locked in to become doctors, right? So it's just really cool just surrounding myself with people that are like-minded, that are very much into innovation. And it was essentially a 10-week bootcamp where each week they would have events, they would have networking opportunities to help you launch a startup or at least an idea of a startup by the end. And at the very end, we have a pitch competition to essentially win a subsidized trip to San Francisco for that ASES summit. I unfortunately didn't win, but I'm really glad with just the overall outcome, just because I learned a lot about myself through that experience.
And so, through the experience and also subsequently, have you been developing some ideas? Is this something that you're working on the side of your studies as well?
Yeah, so it finished about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I partnered up with someone in the bootcamp to pitch an idea for a health tech app. Essentially, it tracks mood. But the issue is that I realized that especially in the world of entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people have to be obsessed with a vision and with a problem. And for me, I don't think I was obsessed enough for that mood app to continue it. So whenever I say I had a massive reflective phase, it was very much like, okay, what areas am I actually really obsessed with? And for me, it's very much the dermatology space. And I'm currently building a startup in that space now.
Oh, amazing, amazing.
No, what you mentioned is a very valid point because, Y Combinator is a very famous startup accelerator / incubator. And even in that, after numerous rounds of selection, startups, they even pivot before their demo day. I mean, they're constantly pivoting. Even after they, a demo, they're pivoting because sometimes you have to find what you're really passionate about in your business, and sometimes you have to trial and experiment, and that's the only way you find out, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'll say it's about being passionate about the problem, and I think that's why a lot of people pivot, right? Because if someone's passionate about the idea, then very much they might not pivot as much because they're very locked in. But as you develop a product or a service, if you're passionate about the problem, you're trying to solve that problem by not by any means, but essentially you're very open to a lot of different solutions, right?
Can I just sort of link that to something else because
Yeah, go
you've
for it.
also you've been involved in some hackathons and I think there was one that you actually hosted yourself in the MedTech arena and sort of linking back to the topic of ideas, being passionate about them. What is the hackathon? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a good process to find out what you are passionate about and trying to link up those ideas with what other people are coming up with.
Yeah. I think the thing with hackathons, so just for context, there was a international MedTech hackathon that I hosted 2 months ago that I was way too obsessed with. I very much have neglected my studies, and I just really enjoyed just the process of just creating a hackathon to encourage
And
innovation.
how many people did you have there?
Yeah, so initially it was over two stages. So the first round was an elimination round, then the final round was the international part of it, where we were on the pitches alongside the National University of Singapore to essentially have the same problem statement and see how different they are and pick a winner from each university. So we had 27 people, I believe, at the start. And then at the very end, I think we had 12 people, and that's just the King side. I think in the Singapore side they had 20 people overall. And I think the thing with hackathons, I'm very big into my personal branding on LinkedIn. For those that don't know, and I did put out a poll once because I was really interested on why people go to a hackathon, or how beneficial hackathons are. And I found out that a lot of people, they do hackathons because of the connections that you get, because of the confidence that you get in terms of applying your ideas and thinking like an entrepreneur. And lastly, I think it's just idea inspiration as well. Because at the end of the day, whatever you consume is going to be the result of your creativity, right? So, especially for this hackathon, I very much wanted to do it because, linking back to the very start, medicine isn't as streamlined as studying and then becoming an NHS doctor. It's about studying medicine for the overall application of just the medical world, right? Being a doctor is just one path of it. So I wanted to empower students and to really give them that opportunity to get involved.
No, that's really amazing. No, and it's the ideation process which is crucial, right? If you don't come up with the right idea, you can't scale it. You can't go any further, right? And that's where bringing those people together and bringing different minds brought together makes such a difference. No, that's amazing. I think we'll probably head towards the last question, and this is really a question hopefully that our listeners can take away with. Just wondering if you have any advice for future innovators, entrepreneurs in the medical field, and maybe if there was someone who gave you advice at the beginning, or someone, an entrepreneur in the field who you sort of looked up to in the beginning, and maybe you can just talk a bit about that as well.
Oh wow, advice. It's interesting because I remember 1 year ago, I was very much, I would be very much a listener for a podcast like this, right? And I never would have thought to kind of give advice.
It changes quite quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, things move very quickly, and I think for me, I think the one advice that I can give is to think about your goals, right?
Yeah.
I won't call myself a seasoned entrepreneur yet, but I can definitely tell you that I've done a lot of really cool stuff, and I think I've kind of found more alignment into what I want to do. I think goal setting is very important for anything. At the very end of the day, it's all about goals. If you have a decision-making dilemma, right, it's all about what goals and what values you have. And I think the only way to do that is just to sign up to as many things as possible and try as many things as possible. It's like what I said about creativity, right?
Did you learn that through experience, or did you have someone yourself who told you that at the beginning of your sort of your education, your process towards this?
Yeah, I'll say two things. So first of all is experience, right? I have a lot of understanding in terms of just the medical world, just because I've immersed myself, but also similar to yourselves, Liam and Shoria, I host a podcast myself, and I remember these two guests.
Give a shout out.
It's called Dear Future X, where we bring in industry leaders to send messages to the future generation. And we always end episodes like this. It's like, if you can give one advice, what would it be? I remember one person, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach called Harry. He said, try as many things as possible. Life will teach you what you want to know. And that was very powerful for me because I very much related to a lot of things that he said, just because of just trying different stuff, finding out what works, what doesn't resonate. I think it's the best way forward, and it's all character building.
No, I think that's a really powerful thing, and it's experience, but it's always good to have someone to tell you that. But in the end of the day, you only learn that fully by trying it out, failing, moving on, learning, and that's a powerful process.
Yeah.
So no, thank you so much for such a really an insightful conversation, and I think there's a lot that we can all take away from this as well. So no, that's really amazing. Just so if the listeners wanted to reach out to you, or maybe see some of your content, and obviously the podcast you guys run as well, whereabouts can they find that?
Yeah, so it's all on my LinkedIn. I'll be very honest with you though. I am quite hard to contact, especially just on LinkedIn, just because there's a lot of connection requests and trying to manage my time a lot better. But if you really want to reach out, just send me a personalized request on LinkedIn, and I'll most likely get back to you. And everything else, anything I'm working on, is all going to be there.
That sounds perfect. So yeah, please do go out to see Rhys's profile, and I'm sure you can learn a lot more about all the amazing stuff that he gets up to. So no, thank you so much for coming onto the show. We really appreciated it, and we hope to carry on the conversation in the future, and we'll keep up with your amazing sort of your adventures and your journey. It's truly amazing. So thank you.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhys. Been a pleasure to have you on.
Cool, perfect. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Bye.